They said I cheated my way into college. But none of them knew the truth. That was the first rumor I overheard about myself. One that spread like wildfire through the lecture halls, the library, even the cafeteria lines. It was the kind of lie that could stain everything I had worked for. And the worst part was, I had no idea who started it, or why. Rumors are like shadows. They creep up behind you, multiply in silence, and before you realize it, they've swallowed the light around you. I could feel them crawling through every corner of campus, on whispered lips, in the darting glances from classmates who once smiled at me, even in the cold silence from professors who suddenly seemed to question my work. And the lies weren't just about my grades. They spiraled into uglier things. Claims that I had bribed my way into classes, that I was faking my family background, even that I had done unspeakable things to climb higher socially. Each story more twisted than the last, as though someone wanted to erase every shred of who I really was. But what they didn't expect was that I wasn't going to break. I was going to find out who was behind it all, and expose them. Don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment telling me your city. It's always fun to see where our stories travel. My name is Caleb Turner. I was 20 years old when this happened, a sophomore majoring in political science at a mid-sized college in Ohio. And while this story took place just a couple of years ago, I can still feel every word of those lies burning in my chest like they were spoken yesterday. First, I brushed it off. Colleges were big, messy ecosystems full of egos and gossip, and I told myself people would get bored soon enough. But as the days passed, I realized this wasn't just idle chatter. It was targeted. Every hallway I walked down seemed to hum with whispers that died the moment I passed. Friends I'd studied with before now avoided eye contact. Even in group projects, I noticed the way people shuffled papers, making excuses to pair with someone else, leaving me standing awkwardly with the scraps of responsibility. Curiosity gnawed at me. I wanted to know who started it, but more importantly, why. The lies were too detailed, too consistent to be random. It wasn't like one careless phrase had snowballed. No, this was crafted. A deliberate campaign to smear my name. I began cataloging what people were saying. I'd catch fragments in the library. He only got that internship because, or in the cafeteria, where a girl once whispered so loudly, I knew it was meant for me to hear. He doesn't even deserve to be here. Each version twisted my stomach, but each also gave me a clue. The precision of the rumors, the way they built on each other, told me someone was orchestrating them like chess moves. One afternoon, after a brutal political theory lecture, I stayed behind to ask Professor Daniels a question about the reading. He had always been supportive of me, or so I thought. But when I approached, I saw something flicker in his expression. Doubt. Suspicion. Caleb, he said slowly, almost like he was tasting the name. You know, integrity matters more than anything in this field. If you want to make a difference in politics someday, it won't be through shortcuts. The words cut me deeper than if he'd outright accused me. Shortcuts. That was exactly what people were saying. That I cheated, that I cut corners, that nothing I had was earned. I forced a nod, keeping my voice steady. Of course, Professor. That's why I'm here, working harder than anyone. But inside, I was shaking. It was no longer about classmates gossiping. The lies had reached authority figures. If professors doubted me, my grades, recommendations, even my future career could all be poisoned. That night, lying in my dorm room, I stared at the ceiling while the muffled sounds of laughter from other halls drifted in. I thought about how quickly reputation defined everything here. In college, perception was reality. And if I didn't stop this now, I'd be branded forever as a fraud. Still, a single thought burned brighter than all the shame and anger. Someone wants me destroyed. Someone close enough to know how to twist the knife. And I need to find out who. The tension thickened with every passing week. What started as whispers was now a full-blown infection running through the veins of campus life. It wasn't just classmates anymore. It was teammates from intramural basketball, students in clubs, even people I barely knew who were suddenly giving me sidelong looks. I felt eyes on me everywhere. I tried to tell myself it didn't matter, but that was a lie I whispered to survive. The truth was, it mattered too much. Because in college, connections mattered. Your reputation was currency, Your name was either your ticket forward or a weight around your ankles. And right now, mine was dragging me down fast. The first real jolt came one Friday when I checked my email. My inbox had a message from the Career Development Center, where I'd been on the shortlist for a prestigious internship with the senator's office. My stomach dropped as I read the words, "Caleb, after further review of your application, we regret to inform you that your candidacy will not be moving forward at this time. The reason? None. Just a sterile rejection, but I knew better. I had the grades, the recommendation letters, and the passion for political science. Someone had poisoned the well. The rejection lit a fire in me. Whoever was behind this wasn't just trying to embarrass me socially. They were dismantling my future, piece by piece. That night, I found myself in the student lounge, watching a group of classmates from across the room. They laughed easily, tossing inside jokes back and forth, the kind I used to share. And in the corner sat Ethan Clark. Ethan was everything I wasn't: loud, charming, effortlessly popular. We'd had a complicated history since freshman year. Both of us were ambitious, competing for the same scholarships, the same leadership roles, the same opportunities. We weren't enemies outright, but the rivalry between us was always unspoken, simmering beneath the surface. And as I watched him lean back in his chair, telling a story to a circle of friends who hung on every word, something clicked inside me. The rumors, the precision, the way they targeted exactly what I valued most. If anyone had motive, it was him. But suspicion wasn't enough. I needed proof. So I decided right then that I wouldn't just sit back and take it anymore. If Ethan was behind this or anyone else, I would uncover the truth. I'd dig through every corner, every conversation, every slip of the tongue until I had the evidence I needed. And when I found it, I'd make sure the whole campus knew the truth. I started small, observation, quietly slipping into the background, watching how people's expressions shifted when Ethan entered a room, how quickly the energy bent toward him. He had this magnetic quality, the kind that made people believe him before he even finished speaking. And if he was the one spreading lies, it explained why they stuck so easily. But watching wasn't enough. I needed something concrete. So I began keeping a notebook, tiny, spiral-bound, the kind no one paid attention to. Every rumor I overheard, I wrote down. Every phrase, every slip, every repetition. Patterns began to form. I noticed how some lies always resurfaced right after Ethan had been in the room, or in classes where he was present. Then something sharper. In a group chat for our political science club, a half-joking comment appeared after I volunteered to help organize a debate. Someone typed, "Maybe Caleb can cheat us into winning." The chat blew up with laughing emojis. But Ethan? He didn't laugh. He just left one cryptic message: "Some reputations speak for themselves." My chest burned reading it. That wasn't coincidence. That was a knife disguised as a joke. The suspicion twisted into something darker. If Ethan was bold enough to plant digs in public, what was he saying in private? I needed allies, someone I could trust. But the problem was, trust was dangerous now. Who could I even talk to without risking the rumor mill spinning harder? That's when I remembered Emily Johnson. She'd been in my freshman seminar, one of the few people who treated me the same before and after the whispers began. She wasn't exactly a close friend, but she had a quiet loyalty, the kind that mattered more than popularity. So one rainy afternoon, I caught up with her after class. The hallways were nearly empty, just the sound of water dripping off coats and umbrellas. I lowered my voice. "Emily, can I ask you something? Have you heard what people are saying about me?" She hesitated, shifting the books in her arms. "Caleb, people talk. You know how it is." "Yeah," I said bitterly. "But this isn't random gossip. It's targeted. Someone's pushing it. And I think I know who." Her eyes searched mine. "You mean Ethan?" Hearing her say his name out loud sent a chill through me. "I just need proof," I whispered. "Something I can use to stop this before it destroys everything I've worked for." Emily hesitated again, then leaned closer. "I can help you. But if you're right about Ethan, you're going to need more than proof. You're going to need a plan." Her words echoed in my head long after she walked away. Plan. Not just defense, not just surviving. If I was going to expose the truth, I'd need to be strategic, maybe even ruthless. Because this wasn't just about gossip anymore. This was a war. Frustration clawed at me every day, like a splinter buried under my skin that I couldn't dig out. Even with Emily's quiet reassurance, the rumors still thrived, mutating into uglier versions of themselves. One morning, I walked into the dining hall, tray in hand, only to hear laughter ripple from a nearby table. A guy from my economics class leaned back in his chair, smirking as he said loud enough for me to hear, "Guess Caleb didn't write that last paper either. Must have had someone do it for him." The table erupted. My fists tightened around the tray. Heat flooded my face, but I forced myself to keep walking, to sit down at a corner table alone. The words stung, but what burned worse was the silence of others who knew me. No one defended me. Not a single voice said, "That's not true." That silence was worse than the lies themselves. By the time I sat down, my appetite had vanished. I stared at the food, untouched, my mind racing. This wasn't just rumor, it was becoming reputation. And the deeper it took root, the harder it would be to tear out. After breakfast, I marched to the library, heart pounding like a war drum. I needed answers, and frustration was fueling me toward something reckless. Ethan was sitting there at a corner table, surrounded by his entourage. His laugh carried easily across the quiet space, grating against my nerves. I stopped a few feet away, glaring at him. He didn't even notice me at first, too wrapped up in whatever story he was spinning. But when his eyes finally caught mine, a slow smile spread across his face. Not a friendly smile, a knowing one. I wanted to confront him right there, demand he stop. The words burned on my tongue, but I swallowed them down, remembering Emily's warning. Charging in without proof would only make me look paranoid. Exactly the kind of guy who couldn't handle the pressure of college. So I walked past, forcing my steps steady, even though every muscle screamed to turn back. But as I sat down at a table near the window, my frustration boiled into something sharper. I couldn't just wait for proof to fall into my lap. I needed to make it happen. And maybe, just maybe, I had an idea. That night, I lay awake staring at the glow of my laptop, the cursor blinking on an empty document. My mind wasn't on assignments. It was on strategy. If Ethan really was the one behind this, he wasn't careless. He'd built his reputation on being untouchable, charismatic, charming. The golden boy everyone admired. He wasn't going to hand me proof. I'd have to lure it out of him. I thought back to the group chat incident, the way he'd slid in that cryptic jab about reputations. He liked subtlety. He liked making people think they were drawing their own conclusions. That was his weapon. So what if I created a trap? The idea twisted inside me, equal parts thrilling and terrifying. I could plant a story, one that only Ethan would know if I whispered it in the right place. If it resurfaced in the rumor mill, then I'd know it was him. But what story could I risk? It had to be believable enough to spread, but harmless enough that it wouldn't ruin me if it grew legs. By morning, I had it, a fake scholarship. I'd confide to someone that I was applying for an exclusive grant, a program that didn't even exist. If the rumor popped up, I'd have my answer. The next afternoon, I found Emily in the student lounge. She was flipping through a notebook, earbuds in, and looked up when I slid into the chair across from her. "Emily," I whispered, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "I need your help with something, but you can't tell anyone. Not a soul." Her brow furrowed. "What is it?" I lowered my voice further. "There's this scholarship. Political leadership, super competitive. I'm applying. But I can't let word get out yet. The process is confidential." Her eyes widened. "Is it real?" "No," I said quickly. "That's the point. If it spreads, we'll know who's behind it. But you have to swear not to tell anyone. Not even your roommate. Just act normal." She nodded slowly, lips pressed together. "So you're baiting him?" "Exactly." I walked away from that conversation with my pulse racing. The trap was set. Now all I had to do was wait. And 3 days later I got my answer. In the middle of class, Two guys sitting behind me whispered just loud enough. "Did you hear Caleb's going for some secret scholarship?" "Figures. He probably has connections pulling strings again." My blood froze. The bait had worked. Ethan had taken it. Now I knew. The confirmation hit me like a lightning bolt. Satisfying, but also terrifying. I finally had proof Ethan was the source. The fake scholarship rumor was out, spreading exactly as I planned. But the victory was bitter. Knowing the enemy and defeating him were two very different things. As I left class that day, I spotted Ethan across the quad, leaning against a bench while a group of students circled around him. He was mid-story, his arms moving animatedly, and everyone laughed on cue. And then, as if he felt my eyes burning into him, he turned. Our gazes locked for a split second. His smirk was small, smug, but powerful enough to pierce me like a blade. He knew I knew. That smirk said everything. Anger surged through me. I wanted to storm over, grab him by the collar, and drag the truth out of him in front of everyone. But I stopped myself. If I lost control, if I gave him the spectacle he wanted, I'd only feed his narrative, that I was unstable, desperate, unworthy. Instead, I clenched my fists in my jacket pockets and walked past him without a word. On the outside, I looked calm. On the inside, my blood boiled. That night, Emily and I met at a coffee shop off campus. It was quiet, dimly lit, the kind of place where secrets belonged. She leaned across the table, her voice low. "So it worked." I nodded. "The rumor's out. He took the bait. It's him." She exhaled sharply, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Okay, so what's next? You can't just tell people it was Ethan. They'll think you're making it up." "I know," I muttered. "I need evidence. Real evidence. Something undeniable." Emily frowned. "Like what? Screenshots? Recordings?" The word recordings lodged in my mind like a spark waiting to ignite. Yes, if I could catch Ethan admitting something, even in passing, it would be game over. But the risk was enormous. Ethan wasn't careless with his words. I'd have to push him, bait him, get him to slip while thinking he was still in control. It would mean stepping into his orbit, playing along with his games, pretending I didn't know he was the one gutting me behind the scenes. The thought made my stomach twist. But then I thought about the internship I'd lost, the professors doubting me, the humiliation of sitting alone while others mocked me. I had no choice. I was going to get that recording, even if it meant walking straight into the lion's den. The very next day, I put the plan in motion. I slipped my phone into my jacket pocket, voice recorder app open, screen dimmed. Every step toward the student union felt like my heartbeat was echoing through the walls. Ethan was easy to find. He always was. He held court in the center of the lounge like a king surrounded by loyal subjects. His laugh carried across the room, smooth and confident, making people lean in as though everything he said was worth gold. I walked straight up to him. "Ethan," I said, voice even. "Got a minute?" The group around him shifted, sensing the tension, but he waved them off with a grin. "Sure, Caleb. What's up?" We stepped into the hallway, just out of earshot. My phone was already recording, hidden in my pocket, and every nerve in me screamed with anticipation. I tried to sound casual. "I've been hearing a lot of interesting things about me lately. Seems like you have too." Ethan tilted his head, smirk playing at his lips. "Rumors travel fast around here. You know how college is." My jaw tightened. "Yeah, but some of these rumors, they're pretty specific. Almost like someone wants me to fall." He chuckled, low and deliberate. "Maybe some people just see things more clearly than you do." The words slid out like poison. My pulse quickened. I needed him to say more. "So what, Ethan?" I pressed, lowering my voice. "You want me out of the way? You want my spot in the debate team, the internships, the recommendations? Is that it?" He leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. "Want? No. Deserve? Maybe. Let's be real, Caleb. You play the hardworking underdog, but everyone knows you're desperate to climb. People see it. They talk." I swallowed hard, fighting to keep my tone steady. And you're the one giving them something to talk about. For a split second, his eyes flashed satisfaction, arrogance, something dangerous. He didn't deny it. Instead, he let the silence stretch, his smirk widening as if he enjoyed watching me squirm. Finally, he leaned in close, his voice low enough that I barely caught it, but the recorder would. Truth or lie doesn't matter, Caleb. What matters is what people believe. And right now, they believe me. The hallway spun for a moment. My chest felt tight, not just from anger but from the weight of what I had just captured. I had him. I walked out of that hallway with my hands trembling in my pockets, gripping my phone like it was a weapon. Ethan's voice still rang in my ears, smooth and venomous. Truth or lie doesn't matter. People believe me. I replayed the recording in my dorm room that night, earbuds in, volume low. Each word was crisp, undeniable. He hadn't confessed outright, but it was enough. Anyone who listened would know he was orchestrating this, reveling in it. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of something besides anger. Determination. I had proof, and I wasn't going to let it rot in silence. But the question gnawed at me, how to use it. If I dropped it carelessly, Ethan would twist it, make me look like the obsessed rival trying to sabotage him. I couldn't just hand it to the rumor mill. I needed a stage, a moment where everyone would hear it at once, where Ethan wouldn't have time to spin. Somewhere public, undeniable, and connected to everything we both valued. The answer came to me as if it had been waiting all along. The upcoming political science club debate. The event was big. Faculty, students, even alumni would be there. Both Ethan and I were on the roster. That was where I'd do it. The plan was reckless, borderline insane. But the thought of standing in front of the same people who had mocked me, who had doubted me, and letting them hear Ethan's poison in his own voice, that thought set my pulse racing with resolve. When I told Emily, she looked at me like I just admitted I was about to rob a bank. "Caleb, that's bold," she whispered. "If it backfires." "It won't," I said quickly, though a knot of doubt churned in my stomach. "It can't. I need everyone to hear it. All at once. That's the only way this ends." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. "Then you'd better be ready, because once you do this, there's no going back." Her warning lingered long after she left, but it didn't change my mind. I was done playing defense. The debate would be my battlefield. The week leading up to the debate felt like a countdown to war. Every day, Ethan strutted across campus with that same smug grin, his little army of admirers trailing behind. The rumors were louder than ever now. People whispering about how I'd supposedly paid off professors, or how I plagiarized every essay I turned in. Lies stacked on lies, building a mountain designed to bury me alive. But underneath the weight of it all, I held on to one thing. The recording. His own words, ready to slice through the facade he'd built. The night before the debate, I couldn't sleep. I paced the floor of my dorm, rehearsing every angle of my plan. I imagined standing at the podium, imagined the hush falling over the room when I pressed play. I imagined Ethan's face, how the smirk would finally drop. Still, doubt clawed at me. What if people thought it was fake? What if Ethan twisted it, made me look like the one manipulating things? I'd be ruined completely. I stopped in front of the mirror, staring at myself. My eyes were bloodshot, my jaw tight with weeks of swallowed anger. "This ends tomorrow," I whispered. The morning of the debate, the campus buzzed with anticipation. Posters lined the halls, faculty reminded students to attend, and the auditorium filled fast. The air was thick, charged, like everyone sensed something big was coming. I sat at the front, pretending to review my notes, but really just keeping my hand close to my phone. Across the room, Ethan was laughing with a few professors, shaking hands like a politician already running for office. He was in his element, glowing under the spotlight he craved. And for the first time, I wasn't intimidated, because I knew something no one else did. The higher he stood tonight, the harder the fall would be. As the debate moderator stepped up to the podium, welcoming the crowd, my heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. The stage was set, and Ethan had no idea the truth was about to rip through his kingdom like a storm. The debate began the way all debates did, measured, controlled, polite. Ethan went first, standing tall behind the podium, delivering his opening remarks with that polished charm that made professors nod and students swoon. He knew how to play the part of the golden boy, and he wore it like armor. When it was my turn, I stood, smoothed the crumpled notes in my hand, and walked to the microphone. My throat was dry, but I forced my voice steady. Tonight, we're here to debate policy, to debate ideas. But for me, this stage represents something more. A murmur swept through the crowd. Ethan tilted his head slightly, still smirking, but I caught a flicker of caution in his eyes. I drew a breath. For weeks now, I've been the subject of lies. Lies that spread faster than truth, poisoning friendships, opportunities, and my reputation. I've stayed quiet, too quiet, because I thought the truth would defend itself. But I've learned something. In a place like this, silence only feeds the fire. The room was silent now, every eye fixed on me. I slipped my phone from my pocket, my fingers brushing the screen. And since some of you seem to believe that lies matter more than facts, I said, locking eyes with Ethan, let's hear it from the source. I tapped the screen. Ethan's voice poured from the speakers, smooth and venomous. Truth or lie doesn't matter, Caleb. What matters is what people believe. And right now, they believe me. Gasps echoed through the auditorium. A few heads whipped toward Ethan. His smirk faltered. I let the words hang in the air like smoke. Then I leaned into the mic. That's not policy. That's not leadership. That's manipulation. And it ends tonight. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, before whispers exploded across the room. Students exchanged shocked looks. Professors frowned, murmuring among themselves. Ethan's jaw clenched, but he forced a laugh into the microphone, stepping forward. Really, Caleb? You're secretly recording private conversations now? How desperate can you get? But his voice cracked at the edges. The room wasn't laughing with him. They weren't laughing at all. For the first time I saw it, the crack in Ethan's armor. And I knew this was only the beginning. The auditorium buzzed like a hive disturbed. Some students whispered furiously. Others just stared at Ethan in disbelief. Professors at the back exchanged pointed looks, their folded arms suddenly heavier with suspicion. Ethan leaned closer to the mic, trying to regain control. Look, anyone can cut and splice audio these days. You think this proves anything? Caleb's always been a little obsessive. I mean, why else would he sneak around recording people? A nervous laugh rippled through the crowd, but it fizzled almost immediately. His charm wasn't landing. I stepped forward. You think this is spliced? My voice carried, steadier than I thought possible. Then explain why your own words match the exact lies that have been spreading across this campus. Your words. I scanned the crowd, letting my gaze settle on familiar faces. Classmates who had once avoided me, professors who had looked at me with doubt. He's been feeding all of you poison. He twisted my reputation to build his own. And now he's exposed himself. I held up my phone, the recording paused mid-sentence. I didn't want to do this, but when lies destroy opportunity, when they cost you your future, you don't get to sit back and hope people figure out the truth. You fight for it. A professor from the faculty panel leaned into his mic, his tone sharp. Ethan, is that your voice on this recording? Ethan's confident facade cracked another inch. I mean, it sounds like me, but the professor cut him off. A simple yes or no will do. The entire room leaned in. Ethan hesitated, sweat beading at his temple. His smirk was gone, replaced by the pale, twitching face of someone cornered. Yes, he muttered. It's me. The crowd erupted, gasps, murmurs, a few outright exclamations. Ethan tried to recover, stammering. But he twisted what I said. It was out of context, but the damage was done. The mighty, untouchable Ethan Clark had admitted it. His empire of lies had just collapsed under its own weight. And I, finally, felt the first rush of victory. Empowerment surged through me, like I'd finally stepped out of the shadows and into the light. For weeks, I'd been the target, mocked, doubted, whispered about. Now the whispers weren't about me. They were about him. The rest of the debate was chaos. The moderator tried to restore order, but the damage was irreversible. Half the students weren't even paying attention to the arguments anymore. They were busy pulling out their phones, already typing into group chats, recording reactions, whispering Ethan's name like it had suddenly turned sour on their tongues. When it was my turn to finish, I didn't waste words. I simply said, "Reputation built on lies will always collapse. Integrity is the only thing that lasts." Applause broke out. Not polite, not forced, but genuine. The sound washed over me, a roar I hadn't heard in weeks. It wasn't unanimous, of course. Ethan still had loyalists, people too invested in his charm to see through it. But the tide had turned. Afterward, as people filtered out of the auditorium, some stopped to clap me on the shoulder, to whisper, "Nice job," or, "You handled that perfectly." For the first time since the rumors began, I wasn't invisible. Ethan, on the other hand, stormed out without a word. His entourage fractured, their faces pale with the realization that the king they'd followed had no crown left to wear. Outside, Emily found me. She didn't say anything at first, just hugged me, tight and fierce, like she knew the weight I'd been carrying. "You did it," she said finally, pulling back with a grin. "You actually did it." "Not yet," I muttered, though the rush of empowerment still tingled in my chest. "He's wounded, but Ethan's not the type to back down. He'll try something." Emily nodded, her smile fading into determination. "Then we stay ready. But tonight, enjoy this. You earned it." For once, I let myself breathe. The war wasn't over, but I had won the first real battle. And now, for the first time, I believed I could win the war. That night, I walked back across campus under the glow of the street lamps, my heart still pounding from the adrenaline. The crisp autumn air carried fragments of conversations. Students replaying the debate, replaying my moment. My name was everywhere again, but this time it wasn't poisoned with suspicion. Carried weight, respect, even admiration. Still, I couldn't shake the unease. I'd seen Ethan's face as he left the auditorium. Ashen, jaw clenched, eyes sharp with rage. He wasn't beaten. Not yet. A guy like Ethan didn't just lick his wounds and fade quietly into the background. He plotted. He retaliated. When I reached my dorm, I pulled out my phone and checked my messages. Dozens of texts from classmates, people who hadn't spoken to me in weeks. Some apologized, others congratulated me. A few even admitted they'd believed the lies but now realized how wrong they were. But buried among the messages was one that made my stomach twist. An anonymous number, no contact saved. Just 3 words glowing on the screen. "You'll regret this." I stared at it for a long moment, my thumb hovering over the reply button before I finally locked the phone. There was no doubt in my mind who sent it. Ethan. Emily called not long after. Her voice was steady, but I could tell she'd heard the same whispers I had. "He's not done," she said flatly. "He's cornered, and cornered people are dangerous." "I know," I admitted, "but I'm not afraid anymore. Not of him." The words surprised even me. A few weeks ago, the thought of Ethan had kept me awake at night, gnawing at my sanity. But now, I'd faced him in front of everyone and come out standing. Whatever he tried next, I'd be ready, because I wasn't just fighting to clear my name anymore. I was fighting to prove something bigger, that the truth mattered, even in a world where lies seemed louder. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring out the window at the dark campus beyond. My hands still trembled faintly, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was energy. Ethan had thrown the first punch. I'd thrown one back. And now, the real war was about to begin. The following week felt different. The same campus that once buzzed with lies about me now pulsed with the fallout of Ethan's exposure. Whispers still followed me in hallways, but they carried a different tone now. Curiosity, even respect. Professors greeted me with less suspicion. Students asked me to sit with them in the cafeteria again, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was drowning under invisible weight. But Ethan wasn't gone. He skipped classes the first 2 days after the debate, which only fueled speculation. By midweek, rumors about him were everywhere. How he'd been manipulating people for months. How this wasn't the first time he'd destroyed someone's reputation. How maybe he wasn't as smart as he made himself out to be. The king of lies had become their target. Still, I knew better than to believe he was finished. A guy like Ethan didn't just lose his throne and walk away. He'd be scheming in the shadows, looking for ways to claw his way back. That's when I noticed something strange. Professor Dr. Warren stopped me after class. He was one of the faculty members who had doubted me the most, always eyeing my essays with suspicion. This time, though, his expression was measured, almost apologetic. "Caleb," he said, adjusting his glasses. "I misjudged you. You handled yourself with integrity the other night. Don't let this experience sour your commitment to this field." I nodded, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. "Thank you, sir. That means a lot." But then he added, "Though I should warn you, Ethan came to see me yesterday. He was very defensive. Insisted he was taken out of context." There it was. The counterattack. Ethan wasn't hiding. He was regrouping, sowing doubts where he could. Later, Emily and I sat under a tree near the library, the autumn leaves scattering at our feet. She listened as I told her about Dr. Warren. "He's trying to twist it back on me," I said bitterly. "He'll spin this until people start questioning the recording. Questioning me all over again." Emily tapped her notebook thoughtfully. "Then we don't just defend. We go on the offensive. You exposed him once, but now we have to cut off any chance of him rebuilding." Her words lit a fire in me. She was right. This wasn't about surviving anymore. It was about ending it. And the risk of what that would take didn't matter, because I couldn't let him rise again. The turning point came quicker than I expected. 2 nights later, Emily called me, urgency sharp in her voice. "Caleb, you need to see this. Now." I met her in the library, where she pulled up a student forum on her laptop. At the top of the page was a brand new post, anonymous but venomous. "Funny how Caleb pretends to be a victim when he's the one sneaking around recording people. Paranoid. Manipulative. Who knows how many of us he's spying on. Is that the kind of leader we want?" The comments section was already filling up. Some defended me, others piled on, feeding off the doubt Ethan had planted. I leaned back, heart pounding. He's trying to flip it. Make me look like the liar, the manipulator. Emily's jaw tightened. "And if you don't act fast, it could stick." She was right. College reputations were fragile, always one rumor away from crumbling. Ethan knew that better than anyone. He was turning my own victory into a weapon against me. But what he didn't realize was that I'd been preparing for this. Since the moment I caught him on tape, I'd been thinking ahead, planning for the inevitable counterstrike. I pulled my notebook from my bag, flipping to the pages where I'd cataloged every rumor, dates, times, places, names of people who'd repeated them. Patterns emerged clearly now, each one tracing back to Ethan. It wasn't just hearsay anymore. It was a map of his campaign against me. "Emily," I said, pushing the notebook toward her. "This is it, the paper trail. Every single time he twisted something, I wrote it down. If we put this together with the recording, no one can say it's a fluke. It's a pattern, a deliberate attack." Her eyes widened as she scanned the notes. "Caleb, this is airtight. We could present this to the faculty council, even the administration. If he wants to play games, we'll bring it to the highest level." I felt my chest tighten, not from fear, but from resolve. For weeks I'd been playing defense, caught in Ethan's web. But now I had a chance to end it. Still, the risk loomed heavy. Taking it to the administration meant scorched earth. No going back. Ethan wouldn't just be embarrassed. He'd be destroyed. And if anything slipped, if I stumbled even once, he'd drag me down with him. Emily closed the laptop and met my eyes. "So, are we going to finish this? Or are we going to let him rewrite the story again?" I didn't hesitate. "We finish it. The showdown came sooner than I imagined. The political science club had an emergency meeting called by the faculty advisor, and everyone knew why. The auditorium buzzed as students filed in, voices low, tension sharp enough to cut. At the front sat the faculty council, stern, watchful, ready to weigh truth against rumor. And in the center of it all, like two boxers waiting for the bell, were Ethan and me. He looked polished as ever, wearing a crisp button-down, his smirk carefully restored. But I caught the twitch at the corner of his jaw, the way his hands clenched tighter than usual around his notebook. He was rattled, even if he tried to hide it. The advisor cleared his throat. There have been serious accusations raised concerning the conduct of 2 of our members. Tonight, both sides will have the opportunity to present evidence. The integrity of this club and this department depends on it. Ethan leapt first, as I knew he would. He painted himself as the victim of my so-called obsession, claiming I had secretly recorded him, manipulated his words, and waged a campaign to smear his name. His voice was steady, almost convincing, and some students nodded along, eyes darting toward me with unease. Then it was my turn. I stood, feeling the weight of every eye in the room pressing down. My pulse roared in my ears, but I drew a breath and spoke clearly. Ethan's right about one thing. I did record him, but what I captured wasn't out of context. It was the truth slipping through his own lips. I pulled out my phone and played the recording again. The venom in Ethan's voice filled the room. Truth or lie doesn't matter. What matters is what people believe. A ripple went through the audience. Shock, recognition, unease. Then I opened my notebook, laying it on the table for all to see. And this is what those lies looked like in practice. Every rumor, every instance, dates, times, people who repeated them. They all trace back to one source, Ethan Clark. This wasn't gossip. This was a campaign. Gasps echoed through the room as I flipped through the pages, each one a nail in the coffin. Professors leaned forward, scanning the evidence. Students whispered furiously, their eyes darting between Ethan and me. For a long moment, the room was silent, the tension coiled tight as wire. And then the advisor turned to Ethan, his voice firm. "Do you deny that these rumors originated with you?" Ethan's smirk faltered. His mouth opened, then closed. His eyes darted toward the students, toward the professors, toward anyone who might still believe him. But the weight of the evidence crushed the performance out of him. Finally, with his jaw tight, he muttered, "No comment." The room erupted. The auditorium exploded with voices, students gasping, whispering, even shouting across rows. Some turned to Ethan in disbelief. Others stared at me with wide eyes. For weeks, I'd been the one under fire. Now the spotlight was burning him alive. The faculty advisor raised his hand, demanding silence. When the room settled, his voice was cold, decisive. "Mr. Clark, in this council, no comment is not an acceptable defense. Integrity is the foundation of academia. If you cannot deny these accusations, then you stand guilty by omission." Ethan shifted in his seat, his usual charm dissolving into sweat and silence. The smirk that had carried him through so many lies was gone, replaced by the clenched jaw of a man cornered. A professor at the end of the panel cleared her throat. Effective immediately, Ethan Clark is suspended from leadership roles within this department and barred from representing this university in competitions. Further disciplinary action will be determined by administration. The words landed like thunder. Ethan's head snapped up, eyes wide. "You can't do that. You're taking his word." "No," the advisor interrupted sharply. "We are taking your own words, Mr. Clark. You condemned yourself." The silence that followed was heavy, final. Ethan stood abruptly, shoving his notebook into his bag. His eyes found mine across the room, blazing with hatred. For a moment, the world seemed to narrow down to just us, the fallen king and the rival who had exposed him. "This isn't over," he hissed, loud enough for me to hear. Then he stormed out, the door slamming behind him. The room lingered in shock, but slowly, the tide shifted. Students approached me, some clapping my shoulder, others apologizing for believing the lies. Professors nodded with something close to respect. Even the advisor gave me a small, approving glance. For the first time in months, the weight pressing down on me lifted. I wasn't the outcast anymore. The truth had won, louder than the lies that once threatened to drown me. But Ethan's final words echoed in my mind like a storm on the horizon. This isn't over. In the days that followed, the campus felt different. The shadows that had trailed me everywhere were gone, replaced with sunlight I hadn't felt in months. People stopped me in hallways, shaking my hand, telling me they admired how I stood up for myself. Professors who once eyed me with suspicion now greeted me warmly, even offering encouragement about future internships. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe. I could sit in the cafeteria without feeling every laugh was aimed at me. I could walk across the quad without glances stabbing into my back. But freedom came with an emptiness too. When I returned to my dorm room at night, the silence pressed in heavy. My notebook lay on my desk, the pages filled with the scars of what I'd endured, each rumor, each betrayal, each piece of proof I had gathered. Felt like both a victory record and a graveyard. I found myself staring at it one evening, asking questions I hadn't dared before. Why me? Why had Ethan chosen me as his target? Was it really just rivalry, scholarships, leadership roles, reputation? Or was there something deeper in him that needed someone to destroy? Emily joined me for coffee later that week, and I confessed what had been gnawing at me. It's over. I know that. But why does it still feel like I'm waiting for the next attack? She stirred her cup, thoughtful. Because someone like Ethan doesn't just vanish. People like him thrive on power, and when they lose it, they crave revenge. Her words unsettled me, but I couldn't deny the truth in them. Ethan was suspended, disgraced, but not erased. He still roamed the same campus, still breathed the same air. And his last words, "This isn't over," still echoed in my head. So even as I savored the respect I had earned, I kept my guard up. The war was won, yes, but the enemy hadn't surrendered. And deep down, I knew there were still battles to come. A week later, the campus had fully shifted. Where once my name had been tangled in venom, it was now laced with admiration. I'd gone from the cheater in whispered rumors to the guy who'd stood up in front of everyone and dragged the truth into the light. It should have felt perfect, vindication at last. And in some ways, it did. I walked taller, no longer shrinking under stares. I caught myself smiling when a professor nodded at me in approval or when classmates invited me to join study groups again. Even Emily teased me one afternoon, "Careful, Caleb. You're starting to look like campus royalty." But royalty wasn't what I wanted. I just wanted peace. And yet, peace was complicated. Every time I passed a hallway where the whispers once lived, I half expected to hear my name twisted again. Every time I saw Ethan at a distance, head low, shoulders tense, I felt the echo of all those nights I'd spent wondering if I was losing everything. One evening, as I packed up in the library, I noticed Ethan across the room. He was alone this time, no entourage, no easy laughter. Just him staring blankly at his notebook. For a fleeting second, I almost felt pity. He looked smaller without the crowd, without the armor of lies. But then, as if sensing me, his head lifted. His eyes met mine. The same fire burned there. The unspoken promise he'd spat at me before. This isn't over. And I realized something important in that moment. The story wasn't about whether Ethan tried again or not. The story was about me. How I'd faced down the lies, how I'd refused to be broken, how I'd found my voice louder than the rumors. I turned, walked out of the library, and let the door close behind me. Because even if Ethan wasn't finished, I had my name back. I had my truth back. And for the first time since it all began, I had myself back. If you want more stories like this, subscribe, give this a like, and share where you're tuning in from in the comments.